Hello, friends! Welcome to episode 3 of the New Mind Cafe.
Woo!
And today I have the privilege and honor of getting to interview Zack, and sort of as a way of introducing himself.
Yeah.
Because we'll be doing a lot of future conversations and interviews, but we thought what better way than to sort of introduce ourselves.
Yeah.
And what brings us here. So,
Well, and it helps us practice our interviewing skills too for when we actually want like real people on.
Right. Because I'm nervous now, but I'll be like terrified. I'm kidding. So why don't we like sort of jump right in? I have like a bunch of questions prepared for Zack, but I want you to talk about like your origin story with music and writing songs and all of that. Like what got you started as a musician?
Sweet. So my grandmother on my dad's side always had a keyboard, and there's a really cool picture. I don't know where that is. I gotta find that. There's a cool picture of me as I was probably like a few months old with my dad, just sitting at the piano. And I don't know. I feel like that's just kind of always been there my whole life, and I would always gravitate towards it. I didn't know what I was doing, of course, but I think just having that present and accessible sort of planted a seed. But then when I was, 10, 11, I started taking music a little bit more serious. I got my own keyboard for Christmas one year. And so then it was even more accessible in my own house, and I was able to just kind of pull up YouTube videos and try to figure out how to play certain things.
How old are you again at this point?
I was like 10 years old.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? I guess a little bit before that, I had some guitars that my grandfather on my mom's side gave to me. And with it was like a set of like DVDs that were like guitar lessons. Wow. And my parents were just kind of like, yeah, like you need to do this. You need to do this. And I didn't want to do it at all. Did not want to do it. So I didn't. And then once they saw, well, he's not doing it. So they totally sold the guitars and the DVD set. Yeah, I think there was something about like, nah, I'm just not cool with it. But then a few years later, picking up music again, like by myself, my parents are like, what the hell, dude? Like, what? Really? Now? Okay.
Are your parents musicians?
No, I think it was just more of like, I don't know. I think it was just like, let's give our kid a hobby.
Trying to like introduce your kid. Did you try sports? Or were you a sports person? I'm clearly not a sports person. I'd be like, are you into throwing the touchdowns and tennis? I guarantee no one's made a tennis and touchdown joke ever.
In the same sentence. No, I did. I did soccer as, I don't know, a 6-year-old, 6 and 7. And then some little league, and I did some karate. But I was just never into it. I didn't really enjoy it, fully, I think. And I think I was just like a kid, and just like any reason to like, I guess have like a club or whatever where there's other kids present, you can run around, get some energy out. So I did that, but, yeah, I think music, maybe it was just like, that was something I could do by myself and like learn and pick it up, as I wanted to. And so
that makes sense.
Yeah. Especially now, like looking back, like I'm totally an introvert. So just like maybe just having my own space to be able to do that and mess up. And so like as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, I started playing keyboard more and just getting YouTube videos. And then, at one point I had lessons, and I had 2 different like teachers, 2 like different music schools that I went to, and I quit both times. Just like, I hated it. I really did not enjoy it. And I think it was just because it was so structured and like, just like, this is what you have to play. And the second teacher I had like, tried to give me more things that I wanted to play. But it wasn't, I don't know. I just didn't fully get into it. I was just bored, I think.
So that's like the big nagging question. I'm like wondering, when was there like a moment that you can pin down, or like a period where like being a musician clicked? Or is this like, this is part of a big part of like who I am? Was that in high school?
Yeah,
was that later, or was that junior high?
Yeah, that was much later.
Huh.
It was probably, so I was probably probably 16 or so.
Oh, interesting.
17.
So that was part of like your high school experience of being like, you found your thing that's going to like sustain you through high school. Like I'm Zach the musician. No,
even in high school. So like I never was a part of band or anything like that in middle school or high school. I just didn't. I never felt like I fit into that. And I think a big part of it was just the music theory. And like, I see these kids playing and like it didn't look like they were having a great time.
Right.
It was just kind of just going to play the violin because that's what I know how to do. And it was like very like intellectual, but it wasn't like like an artistic expression or anything like that.
So let's like get everyone to that point of when you like owned it.
Yeah.
When it became, or even if it's a set of like a period, like when did that register for you when you were like, oh, this is for me. It's not just like a sterile discipline thing. Yeah.
So if you listen to episode 2, Myles shared about that he grew up in a church context, and I did too, actually. I started going to church in like middle school, 6th grade. I was that 11 years old? I don't know what age that is. But so in 6th grade, I started, again, just like going to church. A friend invited me, and then I just got more involved with the church. This ties into music, I swear. So I started getting more and more involved, and eventually, I guess I was 13 or so, and I went to Sunday service by myself. My parents didn't go to church growing up. It was close to the house, so I don't know, I felt a community there or whatever. But so I started going, I went to a Sunday service, and I said to the person playing the piano, I was like, hey, I like what you did here. Just, I don't know, he did something fun, and I was like, I like how you did that. And he's like, oh, do you play piano? I said, I mean, a little bit, kind of, like I've taught myself all the chords, like I know how to do that. He's like, oh, we need someone to like play keyboard. So like, if you don't know, like usually within Christian music, there's kind of like, there might be like a piano, like an actual piano, but then there's like more of a background, like ambient, like string sort of sound effect like on a keyboard.
Pads.
Sort of, yeah. So he invited me for the next Sunday to play like the pads sort of thing. And I was like, okay, sure.
Wow.
I was super nervous. Just like
next week.
Yeah, literally. Like, and he hadn't even heard me. So he's just like, yeah, like here's when rehearsal is.
Just come on.
Then. It was like maybe 300, 400 or so.
Okay.
So
not
still like super small.
You in,
yeah. I was just like, wow. Okay. So this guy just gave me some sort of like credit without even hearing me or anything. So I jumped in, started playing keyboard with the church group, and they had a full band. So like drums, bass, guitar, singers, multiple singers. And it was from there, so at this point I'm like 13, it was from there that I started watching and just like hyper analyzing everybody else in what they were doing in the band context. I started watching the drummer and like, okay, like I'm literally like playing during rehearsal or whatever, and I'm playing the keys, but I'm like watching him the whole time, just like, oh, that's fascinating. Like that's what he's doing. Okay, that makes sense. Oh, and then there's the bass, there's the snare, there's the hi-hat, and just like, I think just being submersed in just the fact that it was happening right in front of me. Just these band people doing their thing, and they love it. Like, they're very passionate about it. They're good at what they do. Yeah. So then, like, the church rehearsal would get out, and then I would just kind of linger. Because, again, I would just, like, walk home after rehearsal. Or if I was getting picked up, I'd say like, yeah, rehearsal ends at 8, when in reality it ended at like 7. And I stayed back, and everyone knew, like, there was no question, like everyone knew where I was at. And I stayed back, and I just like messed around. I just played the drums.
Wow.
Someone left a guitar. I just picked it up, started strumming it. The drums was a big one, because like I really got a lot out of just getting a sense of rhythm. So anyways, to answer your question, sorry.
No, this is perfect.
Yeah. I was like 16 or so when I felt more comfortable with each of those instruments.
Wow. That's
not like proficient or anything, but just like I just felt better. I felt more equipped, and I felt like I could, at least in a church context, like play the songs, which to my musician friends out there, playing church music is probably the easiest thing you can do.
But I don't think it could be understated how many like famous people get their start in church.
Yeah,
right?
That's a good point. Yeah.
So like it is a great training ground for talent. A lot of people come from church. I'm blanking on names. I'm sure you know. you could think of artists that come from?
Like Aretha Franklin comes to mind, like just gospel singer.
Elvis Presley.
Yeah, actually, yeah. So there's totally like a lot, but what better way to connect with other musicians? Like you have a weekly gig,
right?
You know? You're not like an official band or anything, but like that was a way for me to sort of get that context and that idea and that vision in my mind of, oh, this is how I do it with other people.
I love
this is how we collaborate.
Right.
We go home and practice our own parts or whatever. And if I don't do my thing, I'm going to let everyone else down. And not like a shame thing, but like we want this to sound good. We want it to be as best as we can.
Right.
And we're also like, it also taught me like not to overplay.
Wow.
The importance of like, okay, I did my thing, now back off. Wow. Let someone else do their thing. So it's just working alongside others, I think. Especially in like the church context too, like it's not a rock show. And so
depends the church.
It depends on the church.
But
you're
in
absolutely
a Presbyterian, for those who don't know, Zach grew up PC USA.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, most people probably don't care the specifics, but it's Presbyterian, which is like
Church of
not
USA. Yeah.
More like it's not like a rock and roll show every Sunday.
Yeah. So this is a more liturgical church.
What does that mean?
Denomination. Liturgical. Good question. Liturgical is like, I guess, more traditional. So usually in Presbyterian churches, they'll have hymns, they'll have like an organ, a choir. But this church was kind of unique because it had a full band. So like that was like unique to the Presbyterian churches in our area.
Oh man. Okay. So I'm curious because it seems like now like the thing that I'm picking up on like church and like music, that introduction that's very tied together. So I kind of want to parallel this story and we'll return to like creativity, songwriting. But how did you like what led you to like church and Jesus, and to the extent of like wanting to be a Bible college student, pastor? Like when I met you, you were like really serious, like going for your Master's of Divinity.
Yeah.
Like what brought you, like what happened?
Yeah, what happened?
There's a lot to fill in there.
So I started going to church in 6th grade, like I said, and it was really just a friend invited me to like a youth group. It was literally just like a game night every week after school, and like literally just come and play games. And so I was like, yeah. But there was a youth leader that the second week I returned, he remembered my name from the first week I was there. And there was something about that. Like, I'm just like dumb 6th grade kid. Like, I don't have any, like, why do I matter right now? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just didn't have any, I was like, I'm just a kid. Like, but this guy saw me and he like gave me value just by remembering my name. And that was very like meaningful for me.
Wow.
And so I don't know. I think it was from like that. And then just understanding like, oh, this like church context, I'm being seen, I guess, or like people are nice here. People are like treating me nicely, and it's cool. Like now I feel like I have a place that I belong.
Wow. So huge, especially when you're in 6th grade.
It's
high school,
all this
high,
changing and whatnot. And so just to feel like, okay, no, like I this is my place and I belong here. And then again, like I hadn't been fully there at the church for super long, but someone just like, why don't you come play on Sunday morning?
Right.
In front of like 300 people. It's like, what? You haven't even heard me, but okay. So just that, like, just like these older people, I guess, just, showing me like, yeah, you have value. We'd love to have you here. It's very welcoming. It was cool.
So like, I almost can sense, like I could extrapolate an answer to this question by like listening to what you said. But I'm curious to hear what you would say is like, as a high schooler, I'm assuming you like became a Christian, got really invested in church.
Yeah. How
would you have understood the relationship between like music and faith? How did you like see that? Did you see those things as connected? Did you think about it? Would you have had an answer?
I don't think I did think about it. I think it was, I like playing music. There's an opportunity to play music in church context. But then there's this other thing called faith. And I think if I take like an honest look at myself, I was able to do something that I liked I was able to do two things that I liked and then sort of merge them in a way. But there was a lot of like public perception of that. And so as like the kid that like grows up in the church, and then like the adults like, oh, that's just little Zach. What? Little Zach's playing on the stage now. Oh, little Zach's like leading the band now. Like it eventually, like it had a progression for me, but there was a lot of like praise for that. Like there were a lot of people like, oh, look at, like, this is the product of like something we did as a church. Like we raised this little kid up and now he's like leading us in worship. So like for them, it was meaningful.
Yeah.
For me, it was just kind of, I just like doing it. And, I think like as a white male too, I think there was a lot of, oh my gosh, like look how great we're doing. We're raising up another white male Christian, like to be a pastor. And so I think a lot of that, honestly, like I think a lot of that did go to my head.
Wow.
And I think there was a place for me to feel like I could shine, and I had like my weekend gig or whatever. Eventually it did hit me that wasn't fulfilling.
Well, okay, that the performance, reward of the performance wasn't fulfilling.
Yeah. It got to a point where people were like, Zach, you did so good today, and it bothered me. Because I was just like, oh, that's not the point. Like that's not why we're here. And again, like at the time, so there's so much to fill in from then and now as far as my vernacular and language. But
and we'll get there.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
At the time, I was like, no, like this is about God. This is about Jesus. So like we're not worshiping Zach. We're not worshiping the pastor who gave a message today. We're not worshiping the guitar guy because he had a freaking awesome solo or something. Like we're here to worship a God,
which I still like. I like in today's world where like there's so much dunking being done on celebrity, like I don't know. It's such a simple answer, but also as I'm sure you like know, it's also it eventually does become about the person, the face.
Yeah,
because it's like you can't put a face to God. It's like becomes so abstract. Yeah. So it does sort of become about the person on the stage, and that's where it can get dicey.
Yeah, that's the image that you're able to conceptualize and like visually see. So then I think it's only natural for a group of people to go, oh, well, that person's selected by God and they're supposed to be here because God chose them and they have a role. And so I'm going to follow that person because God sent that person.
There's like two questions I want to ask.
Sure.
I'll just kind of throw both of them out.
Yeah.
One is like, before getting back to like music, because that's where I kind of want to end on, how did your faith start shifting? And like, actually, let's just go there. How did your faith start shifting?
Yeah, that was probably, so that was high school Zach. And then, when I graduated high school, I got an internship to be working alongside my youth pastor. My youth pastor at the time was, he was going through what he called his own like deconstruction movement. So while he's going through this, he's also my mentor.
Wow.
And I think, well, thinking about like what you shared on your podcast episode, the last episode, it was interesting to hear how like, oh, we don't ask questions here. Like that's kind of what I was picking up from your story. And I think I was encouraged the opposite, like always ask questions by this guy who is going through his own deconstruction. So like other pastors might disagree with his values or always ask questions. But that was sort of what I was steeped in. And
at that impressionable age where this is like a huge, the biggest role model you may have ever had at the time. Right.
Yep. Yeah. And like we talk to each other every once in a while on the phone. He's moved away since, but he is a very important person in my life, and I think he helped me see the scriptures, the Bible, or just religion in a different way, more as like a philosophy of life rather than like the only way to do something.
So by the time like you went to Bible college and you were planning on being a pastor, all that, was that already kind of like a mindset you had? Yeah. Going into all your studying, you were pretty like open-minded and interested in like picking things apart, exploring questions.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I would say like at 14, like I said, like a lot of those thoughts came to my head of just like people like, oh, Zach's doing so awesome. Like, look at Zach go. Like a lot of that went to my head and it was like, yeah, I'm going to keep doing this because this is where like this is where the glory's at, I guess. This is where people are treating me with respect or whatever.
Right.
So at like 14, I don't want to say I was like groomed because I feel like that has negative connotations, but in a way, like I was like prepared. I was getting prepared by this group to keep doing that thing. So at 14, it was like, I'm going to be a youth pastor. I'm like, now looking back, and I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to know I'm going to be, like, I'm literally a youth myself, but I'm going to be a pastor for this group of people that I'm also a part of right now.
That's so interesting, because that's where our stories are so different. Because for me, questions, I didn't have like a embodied person who told me to answer, that I could ask questions. Mm-hmm. I kind of stumbled into that on my own and with like resources and help too. But in terms of like me entering into like working at the church, that wasn't until I was like 21 that I was like, this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. That like my nickname in high school was Pastor Myles at one point. So like people saw that quality in me.
Okay.
But I feel like there's like a reversing of our circumstances.
Yeah.
That's very different. I was at 14, I was not, I wanted to be a YouTuber. I wanted to do like Minecraft videos. And you're like, I want to like proclaim the gospel.
Well, even that, like, I don't ever think I had that language though, like proclaiming the gospel.
I know, I'm filling in the language.
I think it was like, I like the community that's here and I want to keep that community alive.
I love that.
I like that this system has treated me well and it's giving me value and I want to do that to others.
Yeah.
So there was something about that, I will say.
So let's I love that. Let's follow down. Go ahead.
You asked me about the shift.
Yes.
Like what shifted. And so I would say like it was that youth pastor, but then, so I graduate high school. I then go to a Bible college.
Yeah.
And at this Bible college, with this sort of lens already in place of ask questions, I started reading the Bible like really for the first time. Growing up, I didn't like, I don't know any sixth graders or like middle school through high school students that read the Bible, but
I did.
Okay. Pastor Myles, that's cool.
I
read pieces, I read little bits here and there, and in some ways I remember like treating it like a magic 8-ball, like, oh, flip through a page, I have a problem, okay. Oh, there, okay, page 622, I don't know, I just made that up. Oh,
there's definitely a page 622 in the Bible. The Bible's big, so it's huge. You made it up, but very likely.
I don't know what's on page 622.
Depends the amount of words on the page, I guess. Anyways.
So I started going to Bible college and like for the first time just reading the Bible from cover to cover for the next 4 years or so, 3.5 years. I was like going through this curriculum at this Bible college to like read it and getting all these commentaries and these other, like there's a lot of people. And so as I'm doing that, I'm asking these questions and just question after question after question. I could recognize like right away that there were people that I would ask certain questions to, and people would get like maybe upset or like have this like concerned look, like, oh, Zach, you're not supposed to ask those kinds of questions, dude.
Interesting.
So that was like the first time, because like I had this youth pastor that was always like, no, you ask questions. That's what being a Christian means. Like that's the worldview that I had.
Wow.
But then getting into another space, another culture, where that was not appropriate. To some, I would say, but there were other professors that were always like encouraging.
Yeah.
So not everyone, but there were some other professors that were like, dude, what a great question. Yeah, let's look into that a little bit more.
What a gift.
It's a huge gift.
Yeah.
Huge gift. So like as I'm like going and so to add to like this Bible college has a reputation of being like more conservative, fundamental, having that type of theology.
Right.
But I guess like the questions I was asking was more like a liberal perspective of theology. So again, it was cool to have like the mix of those saying, no, we don't ask those kinds of questions, Zach. Please don't ever say that again. That's absolute heresy. No one said that to my face, but it was just like, that's the sense I got.
Yeah.
And then having other professors. So just having that mixed culture of, yes, ask questions. No, don't ask questions. It was actually really good. It was actually really helpful.
There's a lot there. I mean, it's funny. I think a lot of people wouldn't know that, like, seminary, there's like a stereotype that seminary or Bible college, you can kind of use them synonymously. Is that the right word? I don't even know. Podcast.
This isn't a book.
Yeah, who reads books? But it is known to be a place where people like struggle with their faith or lose their faith.
Seminary, yeah.
Yeah, so, but it's amazing that you were encouraged by a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And it's probably good that you were discouraged by some, in the sense that that's a pretty realistic, you probably had that needed wake-up call to like what you're actually getting into.
Oh, yeah.
Because like I also wonder, with you growing up Presbyterian, PCUSA, which for those that don't know is known as like a mainline denomination that's a little bit more open-minded. I wonder if that affected the environment you were in too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there was just a lot of like culture clashing, I think.
Yeah.
But it was more going on internally within myself. Stepping into new spaces and going, oh, okay, this is a whole new Christianity that I haven't seen.
Right.
So like the church that I grew up in, like it's okay, like female pastors are fine, but not all churches are like that. Same-sex marriage is fine, but not all churches are like that.
Right.
I mean, just to list a few of like some of the, I guess more like controversial issues. I wouldn't even say issues, just topics of discussion. Because for me, that's not an issue. Those things that I just said are not an issue, but to a lot of people, it is an issue, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So yeah, to have that, like, that's what I grew up in, and then going to a more like, no, this isn't cool. That's actually not Christianity at all. Like, like those are the things that I was being told. So just a lot of conflict within myself of like trying to decipher, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to college now, and what I'm learning within college is like, within the Bible college, is like going against what I grew up with. And so that's when, so like literally like within all of those, excuse me, 3.5 years of going through Bible college, it was just like this pole of, that was like the period of like a massive shift. That didn't sound good. Massive shift.
No,
no, it sounded like I said massive shit.
Oh, massive. It was a period of a massive shit.
Well, in some ways, metaphorically.
Okay.
But that was a period of my life where there was a lot of moving going on.
And that's when we met, was during that period. So this is like kind of the last question I'm interested in when it comes to that stuff. Obviously, you could like answer however you want, but I think I'm imagining people who are listening right now will wonder, like, how did you emerge from that shift? Like, where are you now? Like, how?
Yeah,
I know that. I'm curious to see how you'd answer that. Yeah.
So I graduated from the Bible college. So I now possess a piece of paper that says Bachelor's of Biblical Studies. So that's great. Huge accomplishment. And again, I think I had a lot of those people like, oh, Zach, look what you did. Oh, God's working in your life. So great. And, again, I think like hearing that like praise or whatever just continued to bother the shit out of me. It was just like, thanks and all. I know you mean well. Like, I know all you people mean well, but there was something just like unsettling about it. And so, but I kept going. So my next step to becoming like a pastor was to go to seminary, and actually the same seminary that Myles is going to.
Yeah.
So I took a quarter from the seminary, and I came out of this quarter basically hitting like an existential crisis. I did 1 quarter of seminary, and let me just be clear. Like, in this same quarter, in this same period of a few months, I was already in a lot of transition with my job. I was working at a church, and I was just under a lot of, we can come back to that if you want to, Myles. But there was a lot of moving happening. I just got a degree. I'm now questioning, like, this is not the right church that I should be working at. And now I'm going to start a seminary, and all of these I have so many like questions about like the existence of God and what that means. The validity of like the Christian story and what that means.
Right.
And yet I'm going to seminary. So like,
it's tough.
Yeah. So I just kind of hit this wall of like existential crisis in December. By the time that this quarter was over, I kind of had this like, so I don't want to do this anymore.
Wow.
What the hell do I do now? Because for 10 years, from 14 to 24 now, I've been working to be like a youth pastor. That's been the goal for literally 10 years of my life. Even like as a kid, like 14, just still having that mindset and that goal in mind. And so by the time December rolls around, I finish this quarter, I'm just like, oh yeah, I don't want to do that. I feel so uncomfortable with this. I don't want to do that anymore.
You just knew that you needed to.
I knew, but I didn't know.
What do you mean?
I signed up. I enrolled for the next quarter.
Right.
I kept going.
I was like kind of in autopilot going on. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
So then the next quarter started in January, and then I just had to remove myself, and I dropped the classes. I got like the reimbursement or whatever, but that was the point where I said, okay, I don't think I'm going to work in the church until I die or until I retire or whatever. Like, I don't think this is going to be my life journey anymore.
Right.
This is not going to be the career path.
Yeah.
Which was kind of like a big deal for me because in a lot of ways it was me taking that praise that I've been getting my whole life and just saying, yeah, I don't really want that anymore. I guess I never did want it, but it was like, just so not doing this. I don't want to take that glory as a white, privileged, cisgendered male, being yet another pastor, speaking from his accomplishments and privileges that he has. I didn't want to have that. Like, and I knew that there was something bigger than just doing like a weekly. Honestly, to me, like the only word that comes to mind is performance.
Wow.
And I don't mean that to like knock those that go to church on Sundays. I really don't. But that was only like the word that felt comfortable for me in those contexts. Like I am going into this building every week. I'm performing. Whether I'm playing music or not, it doesn't matter. But like I am not being my genuine, authentic self in these spaces because I don't feel that I could. I didn't feel that I could be my authentic self. And so that authentic self piece was also a large piece of me saying, yeah, I don't want to continue at seminary. At least right now. At the time, I thought I was going to take a break. What unfolded was I started saying, what can I do instead? Myles and I started talking about a podcast called Revcovery on his episode, episode 3. And that podcast, Myles, you actually showed me that podcast. Super helpful.
Yeah.
We've been in contact about just kind of what was going on. And so, but like you showed me that podcast, and that podcast is essentially church members or church staff people that have recently stepped down from their position in church and now are doing something entirely different.
Or are within ministry and had experienced that shift and found a way within it.
Yeah.
There's both in there.
Yeah, you're totally right. Yeah. And so it was helpful for me to hear those people and those voices saying, I can't believe I was there for so long, but I was, and this is what I was doing, and now I'm doing this. It was so existential crisis turned into something wonderful is about to happen. I don't know quite what it is, but something wonderful is about to happen.
So that's where I'm like interested in how all this, what I hear in your story is that there is this script that you believe, there's this thing that you were good at that got you performance, that got you credit. And I could imagine as a student in high school, that is so like validating.
Oh yeah.
You had at some point had to make a choice to take a step for a more integral or another part of you, your integrity, your honesty, your authenticity. And you had to move in that direction. So that decision, and I know we're kind of getting that territory where things are pretty close to now.
Yeah.
So I know things are kind of cooking up right now, but how would you say all of this shift has impacted your creativity? Because this is first and foremost a podcast about creating stuff. Like we are trying to do something that is constructive and about creating something new. So like, how has that impacted your creative process? Having that space to be you and figure out what that is.
I think what comes to mind is, I think about a friend of mine who has, taken psychedelic drugs, and he has told me about this concept called an ego death. And I've never taken psychedelic drugs or anything like that. But this concept of an ego death, where there's a piece of your brain, your ego, that is telling you, that's not good enough. Don't do that. Don't write that song. No one's going to care. No one's going to like that song. Oh, that beat sucks. Throw that out. And so there's just this nagging voice that is very negative, and it just sort of, it's trying to bring you down. And so back to the church context, I always felt that voice within church contexts. No, Zach, don't say bad words, because that's not what we do as Christians. No, Zach, don't do this or that. Like, and I never considered myself to be a horrible person, but there's been many times within church contexts where it's like just this fear of doing the wrong thing and having the wrong like presentation of your life to other non-Christians, like, can be debilitating to the whole system or to the whole like organized religion. So like anything that I do affects everybody else within church context, which, as I've been coming out of that, it's been more grace, more accepting who I am. And again, like let me just say this again, like, I'm a white cisgendered male. So already in those church contexts, like, there's already a lot of privilege. And so I get to say that from a place of privilege, unfortunately, because that's the system. But just thinking of like women in church, thinking of LGBTQ plus people within the church, like, they don't have rights. People of color don't necessarily have rights. Usually, I should say that again. I don't want to generalize all Christians are horrible people. I'm not saying that. But from what I've encountered and seen within some Christian context, that is the case. And so it was hard for me to wrap my head around a God who created all things, but then was angry at his creation. And
whoa,
that didn't make sense. That was so illogical and backwards to me. So those were some of the questions, even through like my Bible degree, that I was asking. And so it's allowed me to get to, eventually, it took a lot of work and unraveling, I guess, but it took me a lot of work to get to this place of, if there is a God that created all things, then it's supposed to be there. Because I've never written a song and gone, I'm going to throw this song in. I'm going to throw this chord in, even though it's not supposed to be there.
Whoa.
I've never seen a painter paint something on a canvas and just like make a mistake, perhaps.
Right.
But then like leave it.
Or even if there is like a detour, it's used for the greater peace.
Yeah, there's
it's
something,
all like working out for the greater good.
Yeah. And so cosmically, if there's a creator of all things, why would all things not be necessary for that creation to be there? So
okay, there we go.
So I stepped into I stepped into this place of allowing myself to be who I am, say the things I need to say, not feel like I need to censor myself because it's heresy or it's going to make some people uncomfortable. If it makes people uncomfortable, I'd like to challenge it and just say, what is it? I'm not saying this just to I'm not trying to provoke people, but if there's something that makes you uncomfortable about what I say about maybe how I talk about the Bible or how I talk about God or
right.
Jesus or whatever. Why is it making you uncomfortable? Because I don't think it's me that's doing that. I think there's something internally within another person that's making them feel like uneasy about something, or an insecurity that I just poked at a little bit. I forget your question. Sorry,
you
wow.
totally
I just went
answered
on a little rant.
I think what I'm hearing is that I kind of get the sense that you're currently in that stage of stepping into authenticity as an artist and feeling that freedom. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. That's like, there's this thing that there's, and I don't know, I've like, ever since I've known you, there's always been this creative, brave impulse that I've seen, but it seems like you're fully embracing that right now.
Yeah.
And that's like a liberating thing.
Yeah. So I guess part of that is, what we're doing with this podcast and what this could possibly become in the future. I think it's allowing, so my creative space right now is this podcast. This is my project, and I want to take on inviting people and allowing them to feel that same sense of value that perhaps I once felt within a church context. But I also like valuing people, I think, is an awesome thing that the church does do when they do it.
It's very true. I think, keep going.
But I also don't want to impart my own beliefs onto others. So there's something about valuing. So like, if I'm going to value you, Myles, and you're, I don't know, you're an atheist. You're not. I'm just saying, like, for an example.
Some days I am. Yeah.
Love that. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to be like, no, dude, you got to do what I'm doing. And, no, because I'm valuing you and what you are already doing. And so that's very important for me, stepping into this New Mind Cafe thing and getting that up and running, and just hearing people's stories and learning and allowing myself to be taught by all that's around me.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that totally did.
Sweet.
And I feel like that's such a inspiring place to wrap up.
Okay.
So,
awesome.
Thanks for taking this dive and sharing everything. And is there any last benediction you want to offer? Anything else you want to say before we close out?
I think, well, this image of a forest fire just went through my head. In Southern California, we have forest fires, like almost every year, and it gets pretty gnarly. And these forest fires just ravish through national parks and devastate homes and just char the earth. And from an aerial perspective, like what was once green or maybe brown because it's super dry here, is now just a dark, like menacing black color. And I think it's very destructive. It can be horrible. It can be painful. From that though, almost immediately, like the next time it rains, just about, it's the most beautiful green you can ever see. And so I think there is something about observing certain phenomena such as that in nature and just going, wow, look how destructive that was, and yet how necessary it was for the flourishing of the next thing.
Wow. So
I think, just as I'm wrapping up and the story that I just shared with you all, there was this sort of wildfire ripping through my life, and there were many periods of just darkness, and to then expect for that green, beautiful, lush green season to come after, is kind of the little wave that I'm coasting on right now. I'm so excited to see what this New Mind Cafe becomes, as I'm stepping more into being allowing of myself to just be who I am, and also encouraging others to do the same. Because it takes that destruction for us all to just sort of come out and go, oh. In some ways, I'm glad that happened. Wow. It was horrible. It was a huge, burden in my life, but it needed to happen in order for me to get where I'm at now.
There we go.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful place to end.
Yeah.
Sweet. We'll see you guys on the next episode.
All right. Well, thanks, Myles.
See ya.
It's always fun. Thank you all so much for listening to this New Mind Cafe podcast. We really appreciate your support with this journey of exploring creative people and getting inspired by many different art forms. If you enjoyed the music on this episode, well, that was all original work by me, and if you want to hear more original music, you can check out our band called New Mind Collective. When I'm not working on music or podcast episodes, I'm working on the other component of my small business, which is roasting coffee. So if you want to follow along all of what my business New Mind Cafe is doing in the coffee and the arts industries, then please check out our website at www.neumindcafe.com. On there you'll find upcoming events, gigs, podcast episodes, music, products, and all the links to the social media and platforms to stream music. If you are enjoying this podcast, please subscribe, leave a rating, or comment wherever you're hearing this podcast. And please, please, please share this with others. We are trying to spread the word about what we are doing, and we want to include others in this as well. So if you or someone you know is creative and wants to share, then please email us at neumindcafe@gmail.com. Thank you all again, and have such a great day.